appreciate that. I think the thing on the pre-trip, and I'll have to default to Joel. I think it's kind of too time consuming the way it is now. I mean, I'm a safety guy too, so
I think so too.
I think it's.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather have it default to, just the items that are in. Yeah, have it default to operable, and then if it's non-operable, is there a way to have, say they choose non-operable? Well, first on the first part, is it possible to do that? That everything defaults to operable?
Yeah, and that's how I had it set up originally. I had it set up that it was just a default, it's all good. They only have to interact if it's a non-operable. Like I said in my email, Joel had actually pushed back and said, no, I want them to have to interact with each field. Right?
I understand that. I totally understand. I give him much credit for that.
Yeah.
I'm the safety director, and Joel's our yard manager, so I give him a lot of credit for that. And I don't want to compromise safety. I don't want to compromise, the fact. I don't want them to pencil whip this thing. But I'm being realistic too, as to the amount of effort that's involved in it, and kind of picking the battle. You know what I mean?
So totally possible. I'm going to leave it up to you guys. What makes sense, how we want to configure it. But yeah, like I said, I had it default before that it was everything's all good. They only interact if there's an issue. Yeah, the feedback I got now is that every field has to be, interacted with. So whatever you guys let me know, we can set it up.
Okay, here's Joel now. Hey.
Hello.
Hey, we just started like a minute ago, and I was just saying that it seems like roles are kind of reversed. I totally understand your point, Joel. We don't want this thing pencil whipped. We don't want it to have to, okay, everything's operable. They just click next, and they're really not doing the pre-trip. It's much, better that they have to click operable and really go through it item by item. My concern is that it's kind of an onerous process to do that, especially on the tablet in the bus. I was messing with it, kind of click through it, and I don't want to compromise, the effectiveness of doing the pre-trip, but I also want to be realistic as to what, that they're going to do it. So, so we were just saying that it is possible to just have everything default to operable. So say you take that first item there, where bus interior damage, it would default. You're saying that you could set it up that it would just say operable as default.
I think that's how we had it set kind of originally, was that, the default was that it's all good. They only have to interact with these fields if there's an issue that they have to select non-operable.
Suppose there was an issue and they clicked non-operable. They chose that button. What is it possible to have it a little field pop up that they could type something in there, or do you do that at the end? I think so
there's not a workflow built in yet, and I think we've talked about this before.
Yes.
That it's definitely on the roadmap there to be able to, hey, if this is selected, give me different options. Today, you would have a field at the end saying, hey, go ahead and provide any notes for any non-operable. That's the only way I could set it up.
So how would that? Where would we see that? Will we see the end of this page? Like, because I see next. This is kind of like set up just the way the pre-trip is set up, right? Where you have operable.
Hey, Maddie joining us too.
Okay.
Morning, Maddie.
Good morning.
Good morning. Apologies for being late.
No, we just started. Hi, thanks, Maddie.
So we can set it up. Talk me through. Yeah. My expectation would be, users only going to be selecting these options. Maybe going forward, once I hear feedback from you, once we know what makes the most sense, they would only select non-operable if there's an issue, and then at the bottom, you could have an optional note field saying, provide any notes for any non-operable selections, right? And they could fill that note field out.
And they could have that on. They could have that on a note field on each page, because, like, for example, this is like items during warm up. Items. What was the title of this one?
Another note field down here. Yeah, this is your items during warm up. The previous one was the before operating, and then I think we've got a third field that's optional for special needs.
Right, and that one can be. That was optional. That was like when you finish this and get to the next page.
That's right.
Like-
Yeah, so we could have a notes field, indicate any non-operable that's selected, please provide, notes, and it would just be a blank note field that they can fill in. But yeah, no option to right now to be able to select non-operable and have that, pop up or appear at that point.
Okay. And there's also no logic to say that this bus is not able to be driven. That there's like service brakes don't work. If they click non-operable, it's just going to submit the report, and they could still drive the bus if they want, as opposed to it popping up.
I think what we talked about last time is
Mhm.
if there's fields like that, like if brakes are selected as non-operable, just having text next to brakes saying, if non-operable, don't drive this vehicle, something like that, right?
I think if we have drivers that are going to drive the bus when the brakes don't work, we have a bigger problem.
We got a bigger problem.
I wonder, but
Exactly, but they're right. So, I mean, some of the stuff we have to just do just through training and through awareness and how to do the pre-trip. So on this one here, this is the last page, right? It's like what's the title of this one up top? Is it handicapped if applicable?
Yeah.
So here they could just submit this, or they could do it. It's not like on the
are optional.
previous pages you had to do it. This one is
That's
optional.
right. These are all optional fields, yeah.
All right, and then you could have like a field at the bottom here with like a blank area where they could put notes.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? Like an open note field for each of these saying, if non-operable, please explain, something like that, right?
All right. So yeah, that was
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you go back to the first page of the pre-trip?
Yep.
So if everything is default to what does that say? Operable. From this screen, without scrolling down and filling out the mileage or anything, can they hit next in advance, or does that field at the bottom prevent them from moving forward?
I don't think I set these mileage fields as being required now, so you can leave these blank. So again, each of these fields here I can set as required or not required. So we can determine what do they need to stop on, right? Like a notes field is going to obviously be optional because if everything's operable, I may not need to provide any notes, right? But,
How about the top field, like the very top when they select a bus, they select a vehicle. That's required, right?
well, so I have to put in a vehicle here. Yep.
Okay.
It's going to pull in information for me automatically, like license plate. One thing that we hadn't talked about, but I honestly just removed the need to select the driver altogether, because when this is being submitted, we're capturing the user that's logged into the device. I figured that's probably sufficient. Presumably the user that's logged into the tablet is going to be the driver that we're associating to it. So it seemed a little redundant to also have them pull their name from a list here.
So
That makes sense,
when we run a report on this to see all my pre-trips, it's going to show me the drivers. I'll see the driver's name. Correct?
You got it. Yeah, we capture quite a bit of information. So we grab the driver's name, we grab a time and a date stamp, we grab an XY coordinate of where the form is submitted. So we capture all that information automatically anytime one of these forms is submitted.
Okay, so we'll have to provide like a list, updated list of all the vehicles, so it populates the the license plate number.
But then, like for example, we have most of this information in here. I think I grabbed like the one example, 2117, that I don't have a license plate for.
Yeah.
And you'll see that it shows it kind of blanked out. But
Like number
for the most
12.
part,
12. I did one for 12. So if you put bus 12 in there, it should populate it.
Yeah, and so you can see it is pulling from our database. It's pulling from our list of vehicles that you provided us. So if I put in 12, I do have a license for it,
Right.
and it'll auto-populate.
Is there a need?
That's just for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there a need for that even to be there for the driver to see that?
I think it was on something we originally talked about, but
It was on the original inspection sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Joel? Do you think there's a
again,
need?
it's pulling from the system. No need for the driver to fill it in because we should have it on file. All I'm doing is lighting it up and making it visible to the driver.
I think it's fine.
You think to remove it?
No, I think it's good for it to be there.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to be there. So if it's just going to be an extra check, if they put bus 12 in, they see that plate number, they're going to say, okay, that matches up. If it doesn't, they can contact us, right, and say, hey, I put this in and there's no number or it's the wrong number. It would be just like an extra check for them.
You're going to see that in the reporting, the vehicle, the kind of pre-trip inspection. So I imagine we'll get to this at some point. Don't mean to jump the gun, but kind of a report that you can pull that shows the pre-trip inspections. As you can see, we don't have them being done, so most of these are lighting up as we don't have an inspection. But I assume that we'll want to run a report like this probably on a daily basis, right? So you can see the outliers kind of highlighted in yellow, anyone that hasn't done an inspection for a vehicle. The ones that do have an inspection, you'll see that here. It should show the license plate. We don't have drivers assigned to trips yet, so we don't have assigned drivers populating yet, but we should have that. And then if there is a fault or something like that, how it would stick out. This report's totally customizable, so there's a lot of data here. If we want to make this a little bit more readable or whatever the case is, we can play with that too.
So how about finding the driver's name? Like, for example, suppose I went in there right now and I did a pre-trip. If I'm not assigned to a route, how would they know that it was me that did it?
Yeah, that makes sense, right? So I probably don't want to see the assigned driver. I want to see who actually submitted the form. Makes more sense, right? So what I would do is in the report, I would just come in and say, hey, go ahead and fill this in with the user that submitted this.
Oh, okay. Oh, so that information's there. So if I'm logged in to Wayfinder route and I'm doing it, it knows that it's me that's submitting it, and you have that data.
Yeah, and you can see it here, right? So here's the user that submitted this form was an admin, right? It wasn't an actual driver. So admin submitted it, the date they submitted it on, the time they submitted it on, and then the fault that they got was bus superior fault.
What's the bus number on that one?
So that's 2100.
Oh, okay. It's two lines. Okay.
So, yeah. Because there may be multiple faults is the idea, right? You may have selected bus superior fault, maybe there's a mirror fault, maybe you get 4 or 5 things, and so you'll see those kind of appear below it.
All right. And now I'm thinking about the readability of the data when we run a report. Like, to me, I'd like to see it like in an Excel format and just have all the buses listed.
Sure.
And easy to work with that data.
Yeah, this same report that I have here could definitely be run as an Excel. So if I take a look at that pre-trip inspection, this is the same form that I ran as a PDF, but we could set the default, and I'll put my dates in here for, by default, you probably want to run this every day for today's or yesterday's inspections, but I only see some data for the 8th, so I'm going to go back to the 8th here real quick. And rather than running what I just ran as a PDF, I'll just run it as an Excel. We can set that as the default.
So you changed the parameters. That was the tab you went to parameters there?
Yeah, so just so you understand how running reports work here. So when I go to run a report, there's actually a few ways to do it. I guess we should talk through running reports. I'm in my reports page here, and this is where you'll see some of the reports we've built so far, like the timekeeping and pre-trip. One way that I find really useful to run reports, though, is you can actually run it right from the data grid. So, if you're in your vehicles, you may know that there's some non-operable vehicles or backup vehicles, so maybe you don't want to run this report for all 335 vehicles. You can filter down or only select the vehicles that you know are running for that day, and you can run the reports from right here. So if I go to View Reports, I'll see that same pre-trip inspection form. But now what it's doing is when I go to run it, rather than running it for all 335 vehicles, it's just running it for that handful that I've filtered down to or selected.
And now,
when I go to run the report, a few options that I have here, we can set what we want this to default. Right now I have it pulling up as a browser PDF, but I could definitely download as an Excel. Like I said, make that the default that it runs to. The data source it's running in, which should be our current data source here. And then again, this is where you specify what records I want to run it for. Am I doing it for all 335? Am I doing it for a filtered list of vehicles, maybe only ones that are in service currently? Or am I just going to pick specific records like I did here, where I just grabbed 17 vehicles and I'm going to run it for those 17?
How would I pick that on that one choice you had there, specific on filtered? How would we know? Say I wanted to run it just on vehicles that we're running today.
Yeah.
For example,
Yeah.
So for example, let's say we filtered out all the buses in one location, right? And we want to run it on just that one location. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, something like that,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, no, that's a good filter example. So maybe by yard, or if you have ones that are active versus inactive, we'd have to pre-configure the filter, right? So we'd have to have that pre-configured for you. So if we're keeping that data, like our vehicles by yard, so if we have the yard tag to it, I could just create a new yard. Like, so for example, based on the data, limited data that I've got here, maybe I just want to see 54
Okay.
student vehicles. I've got 208 of them. So I could save that as a filter here. This is going to be my 54 student buses. And that's a vehicle filter that I'll have going forward. So as new vehicles come in, go out, this will say up to date. I'll always have that. And then when I go to run that report, so I'll go ahead and
Right.
run the report again that we're just in.
So it's just running it on these
Now,
208
yeah.
vehicles.
Yeah, so right now you can see it's running for all 208 vehicles. But if I want to change that up, I could do that and say, hey, go ahead and actually apply the filter I just created
gotcha.
and run this for all 54 student buses that I have. So, this is how you can kind of filter down. Give me all my vehicles, give me one of my filters that I have by yard, by, whatever the case is. Or, I'm just running it for a handful of vehicles that I know I want to see.
All right. So if I were, so there we can filter. You can run just for a particular yard. Is there a way to know like what buses actually ran in a given day? Like say we have 100 buses, but there are only 50 of them did not run today. But I want to know who did a pre-trip on those 50.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. That's a good question. So,
Like, because it'll tell me, it'll say there are 50, it'll say there are, I'm just thinking that it'll say there are 50 buses that there are no pre-trips on, but that is okay because they didn't run. I just want to know who did the pre,
Yeah.
that there was one. When there should
Yeah,
be
good
one.
question. So I'm trying to think how from like my vehicles can I know which ones ran today. The thing I would think to make it kind of easy is with our trips here, we're going to have associated vehicles. We don't have trips in here yet, right? So I'm not associating my vehicles to my trips to know which trips are actually supposed to be going out. From here, I could just say, hey, let me right click on my trips and say, hey, show me all my associated vehicles. That's going to narrow it down and give me my 50 vehicles that should have gone out today, right? They had trips associated today. No data here. It's kind of hard to show what I'm talking about, but yeah, from any of our data records, I could say, hey, go ahead and show me a new grid of just those specific records. So, yeah, Maddie, if I check in there, any thoughts you have on a way to kind of quickly filter down my vehicles to know the ones that are associated to trips, things like that?
Not off the top of my head, but let me.
I think, is there any way to know,
Is
there any way to know, like, which vehicles had, that moved? They had data during the.
Well, if you have a dispatch screen of sorts that tells you what vehicles are on routes for that day. So I would imagine you could be able to pull from your dispatch the vehicles that are assigned to routes for the day, or
Yeah, I think that's right? Because we do have screens that are showing GPS data, so what vehicles moved. We do have a dispatch screen that shows what trips went out, what vehicle was assigned, what driver was assigned, how many kids got on, all those kind of pieces. I was thinking about how to kind of tie it together so that I can automatically run those reports here. We're tracking all the information.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, please, Maddie. Would you
No, I was going to say, I think the reason why that their assignments are not appearing on this specific grid is because a lot of the trips that we build and clients build have dates associated with them. So you very well could be stacking vehicles onto multiple trips as long as the dates don't overlap. So in the trip grid, you can see which vehicle name or number is assigned to a specific trip, but because that's a one-to-one relationship, but within a vehicle, it's because there's a one-to-many relationship between how many trips can be assigned, they wouldn't appear on this specific grid.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to work with you. As we start to get some trips in there, I think it's pretty easy to say, hey, these are the trips associated to, these are the vehicles associated to trips out there today. As substitute substitutions happen, we're going to stay up to date on that, right? Normally it's vehicle 101, but today vehicle 102 ran it. I think we just need to start getting a little bit more data in there to help us filter out what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Right. And the trips grid does have a vehicle name and current vehicle size as well. So I don't know if I can put a screenshot in the chat, like I can, I can't, but I have another client out that does confirm that you can see the vehicle information there.
Just to give you a quick sense while I'm sharing my screen, I'll go ahead and share, that report that I downloaded rather than having it as a, PDF format. You can certainly download this to an Excel file as well. So, like I said, really it's a matter of refining this data to, how do we want it to look for a report you're going to run every
Well,
day.
the good news is, at the very least, we have a way that folks can do their pre-trip, and it's going to tell what vehicle, and I know who they are, and I can export that data, and we can work to refine it as we go forward.
That's what I see it, right? I want to make sure we're capturing the right inputs, right? If we're capturing the right data, we can play with how we're setting up the reports or running the data for you to export it to. That's the biggest thing. Are we capturing what we need to kind of capture?
All right. So go back to the.
I jumped off it a little bit.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I jumped off it. I was going to make sure we kind of talk through refining what we wanted this pre-trip to look like as well.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to suggest too. We're getting into the weeds of all what we can do with the reports. But on the original thing here, I mean, I'm okay with, having everything default to operable, and then just work in the realm of operational discipline to make sure folks are actually doing the pre-trip. Because I think if we make it too onerous, it's going to create more problems and more questions, at least in the beginning, when we want it to be as simple as possible.
Well, one thing I think of too for sure is we're forcing them to interact with the screen every time, and they're moving quickly. How many situations are we going to come up with? They test non-operable and
right.
unoperable things because they're going through it quickly, and how much more time and effort is that for you guys? Look, we could test it out and put it in drivers' hands and get feedback and things like that. But it sounds like for right now, we might want to look at having it in a default operable state. Drivers have to interact to indicate what's non-operable. Is that right?
Yes, and then we'll add
Other changes.
and we'll add a field at the bottom. We'll add a field at the bottom for some notes that they can put in.
How do you feel about a field at the bottom requiring their name input to confirm, to confirm that they went through it?
Alternatively, what I might suggest, Joel, is just at the very end of it, or on each page,
like an initial here type
signature. Yeah, we can request a signature. Like I said, on each page or at the very end of it, and make that a required field. Because right now, if we said everything is non-required, they could just next and finish the whole form in 2 seconds, right?
So, are you suggesting that we'll have like an initial field at the end of each page?
Yeah.
All right. How would that look, Zach? I mean, how would they do something like that? Just like a field where they just put their name in free, or they would pick from a list?
No, it's on a tablet, so they would go ahead and scroll in, an initial or a signature, something like that. So, again, we're in a web browser versus a tablet, but just to give you an indication of what it looks like here, let me pull it up and give you a view. Because signature was something that we were required to put into this because a lot of our clients use this stuff for driver training hours, and they need to have signatures on file, pieces like that. So kind of nice that we have the option of doing a signature field. So I'll go ahead and add, we could even just indicate initials, and we could say required, something like that. We'll put the signature field in here. Jumped all the way down at the bottom. So I'll bring this up. And like I said, we could drop this on each one of the pages there, so before they kind of next, they got to go through that. So I'll save that one. And then when I come in here, what you'll see is an initials field here. right? And when they tap on it, it'll just have an open screen here.
Oh, wow.
Put in my initials, and I'm
Oh, I
ready.
mean, they actually draw on it with their finger like that?
Yeah, it's a tablet, right? It's a
Oh,
touch
wow,
screen,
okay.
so the browser interface is kind of goofy, but on the tablet, it definitely makes more sense, right?
I'm cool with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that helps to slow down a little bit, just to make sure that they're looking at the screens, because otherwise, I don't think these mileage fields are required. From my understanding, if we're setting all these operable fields as non-required, yeah, it could be real easy to just next. But if they're signing out here, there's a little bit of pause and slow down. They're putting their name to something, that kind of thing.
Do we need to make that mileage field required?
I don't believe so. We might want to get with John, but I recall John not wanting
Yeah.
the drivers to handle the mileage. And
Yeah, we can get it.
mechanics.
And I know they can get it from, from Samsara. They can get them out. I'm just thinking from the pre-trip standpoint, like, the legal requirement of it, that they have to put that in there. I don't think so.
I'm not sure about the legality of it.
And I have no idea. I'm really just building these things based on what you sent me over.
Yeah.
So I saw these fields in here. I stuck them in.
Let's
So
just leave it as
everyone
let's
thinks-
leave it as not required right now. So they would put their signature,
think-
and then it verifies that they've looked at it, they've done it, and they go to the next screen, and we'll put that same field at the end of each page.
Yep.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what's it look like when they get
we'll
to
make
the
it required on each.
when they get to the very end?
I still have all these as
Yes.
required. I'll have to go through and tweak these, but yeah, we'll go ahead and plug these in. And actually, I only created the one, so I don't have initial fields on each page there.
Okay.
One thing I noticed as I was going through this with you is that last page, the handicap. I have a note up at the very top that says, if applicable, but it's not totally clear that those fields are required or not required. Since we're making none of the fields required, I think that's probably okay. I was rethinking that through. I want to make sure it's clear what's required and what's not. Maybe on the initials, I can add like a little asterisk, say required, something like that, so that drivers.
I think we should change the text on it. Instead of handicapped, we'll put wheelchair equipped.
Yep.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, so
You think
these
that-
are, these
wheelchair
forms
equipped,
are
yeah.
based right on the platform and stuff that you guys can tweak language and stuff like that on, but
Okay.
that looks right.
No, that looks fine. Or wheelchair equipped or equipment, whatever. We could change it.
Oh, I said equipment. Yeah, initials, we could,
Oh, there you go. Right.
I think that'd be helpful. And then
Joel, I saw that the vehicles you requested, John was able to get those in there, and so do you have folks like testing out the clocking in and clocking out?
When did he do that? Because
Oh no, I went to Samsara. I went to Samsara and just looked at those like 526, 529, and it looks like there are at least the Samsara units in there. Whether they put the tablets in there or not, it's different. I don't know that.
okay, that's
But I saw you had some folks clocking in and clocking out. In one.
yeah. I've got him using the computer
Oh, okay.
in the break room.
Have
they're
you?
starting to collect data now.
So now I want to know if I want to review their hours for the week.
Yep.
When I go through the timekeeping admin portion, it doesn't display anything. Is that where I'm supposed to go to monitor their punches, or am I supposed to go to the data drop down
Really?
and then select employee or staff? You see what I'm saying? Because there's that other section on the right that says admin.
So yeah, let's talk through, now that we're collecting punches, how are you going to be able to kind of see this info? So here I got 408 drivers. Same kind of setup that we're looking with pre-trip inspections, right? So what I could do is I could select all my drivers from here and say, hey, let me go ahead and take a look at a report for my employee time card review. Right? Let me go ahead and run a report this way I can see all their hours, all their information, and we'll run it for, well, we can just run it for yesterday, that's fine, right? You've got people punching daily. Did I jump too quickly on something?
No. Can you filter just the Camden yard?
Yeah, we've got yards.
That's probably only what's going to come up, right? Because nobody else is doing it. But I see what you're saying. Like you can do that. I can see what you're saying. So there, what are you going to? So these are all your Camden employees. So what do you just click Control A to select everybody, or however you selected everybody?
Yeah, that's the quickest way that I do it. Again, you may want to save this as a filter and then run the report with that filter applied. You know, if you're doing this quickly, yeah, just go ahead and type in Camden Yard here. Right click, and we go ahead and view that report for it now. So employee time cards, I specified those 55 drivers. I'm in my data source here. I'm going to view it as a PDF, but again, obviously, if we prefer Excel, we can run that. And then my date parameters right now is set for yesterday. If I want to go through and run this for this week, last week, whatever the case is, I can set those date parameters.
Yeah, run it for this week. This way, there might be some more data in there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to actually set all my fields for this week here.
Now, what's the difference between those fields? I mean, the first one, date range, I understand, but what about the other two?
Good question. So this report's actually pulling in a couple of reports of data, right? So, for example, I have driver punches that have been submitted by drivers, and those are looking at the date that they were created on. But I'm also running the report for maybe admin punches that have been put in by Joelle or somebody else. Those are not looking at the date they were created on. Those are looking at a different date range, right? They were maybe created today, but they were set up for last week when somebody had missed a punch. So those use unique date ranges. I will say it's a little redundant going through and setting these for this week 3 times. There's been a feature request we put into our dev team to let it all be the same. But, you know, my development told me there may be some use case where I want to see, you know, for example, show me the leave hours from this week, but driver punches from last week, and I want to see that on a report. That's why I'm setting this 3 times. You know what I mean? I don't see the use case for it. I think usually I want to call for the same date range, but yeah, we'll get there to save that time a little bit. All right, so I'm running all my data for this week. So admin punches, driver punches, all of that should be running for the same range. You know, some of these drivers are not going to be punching out.
Right, it's only about 10. It's only about 10 people or so.
Yeah. So I'm just going to look for ones that have subtotals, and it's going to bring me to a driver here. I can see the date that they punched in, punched out. I'm collecting daily total hours, but you may also want hours for each shift. So, for example, like this driver had 2 shifts. They punched in at 7:05, punched out at 9:30, punched again at 12:10, punched out at 2:02. I'm only giving you a daily total here, so all of their shifts for the day. But you tell me, so if you want to see the hours for each shift, we can collect that as well. Highlighting, you're seeing your missed punches, right? So they punched in at 7:09, they forgot to punch out though, so it's not giving me a total for that. 12 hours, 30 minutes, I ran it for the week, so that's my week total. If I ran this for 2 weeks, I'd have a 2-week total here.
So this is an example, like if there's a missed punch, that Joelle could go into their time card and you know, retroactively punch them out and then run the report again and it would show?
That's it. So most likely, you know, rather than going through time card by time card, and I work with a lot of districts, that's what they do. They go time card by time card. But most likely you want a report that just says, hey, here's the 10 missed punches for today. So I do have that as well. I've got a shift exception report that'll say, hey, here's your, you know, and we'll run that real quick just to give you a sense of that. Yeah, you probably want that in your inbox every morning. Hey, here was yesterday, here's all the missed punches. Those are the 10 missed punches you got to jump in and fill in for.
So we also, you know, I would expect I would have to do a lot of time adjustments because, for example, our drivers, we guarantee 20 hours a week, but so it's 4 hours a day, right? Their run might be an hour and a half or an hour, right? So they're getting, so they have an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. And I'm supposed to adjust that so that it's 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. So is there any way to do that by looking at a time card, or do I need to print out, or do I need to run a report to see?
You're going to do it on a shift-by-shift basis rather than like so how we do it with most drivers is they have like a daily guaranteed hours, right? They're getting 5 hours guaranteed, maybe a 4-day or 5-day. And so they're guaranteed 25 weekly hours. What they do is, their payroll set to pay that driver 25 hours, and what they really care about is hours over shift or things like that. They could run a report and see how short they were for the week, but you want to be able to actually adjust it shift by shift. So if they drove for an hour and a half, but they're guaranteed hours, you want to go in and give them an extra 30 minutes on each shift so that it hits that guaranteed hours.
Right. That's what we've been doing.
All right. It sounds like a lot more work than just saying like, well, here's the weekly, here's how short they were. If they're guaranteed hours, they're guaranteed hours. So I kind of feel like I could just send those guaranteed hours over. You can do that. We'll talk through it, but here's a quick example of the like kind of miss shifts, right? So here's my miss shift. So for the week we got, what did you say, 10 drivers punching. A handful of them have missed their ins and outs as they go through. So you've got the date, you've got their miss punch that they're missing. You can jump into their record real quick and make a change. Yeah. So the truth is, time is the calculations at least are mostly going to exist in our reports here. So if you want to see how many hours did they have on a shift, on a day, on a week, on a 2-week period, you're running a report to be able to see that. Let me jump in and change gears real quick now, see where I am on time, make sure I'm not going crazy. All right, I got 20 minutes. Hopefully you guys are okay to hang out for
I think we're.
A little bit.
I got one question. When we do clock in and clock out, I was thinking about the sheet, about the actual form. Do you think I'm asking Joel, do you think it benefits us to know that they identify what bus they're in too? Should they put like I'm in bus 12 or whatever?
Not when it comes to their time card. I don't think that's.
No, I'm thinking like I'd like to know who is in what bus. I guess and I'm trying to compare what we're doing with Route Finder and what we're doing with Samsara, and like.
On the inspect. Okay, so you got the driver on the bus. He logs on to the tablet. Now we have an aide on that bus that needs to also sign in on that tablet.
Mm-hmm. Well, not with Sam. We're not going to do this with Samsara.
Right. We're going to use Transfinders.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work? Does it log the driver out? Or
I think that the form allowed whoever's logged in is logged in, but when you go to the form, multiple people can do time cards. So at the top,
that's right. That's what we've gotten as feedback mostly is that we just want flexibility. There's no real reason for an aide to log into the device other than they need to submit their time, right? So what we have is with the timekeeping form, we can make this strictly tied only to the user, so only to who's logged in, but that becomes a real hassle for an aide having to log all the way out of Wayfinder, log in with credentials again. So what we usually do is we'll pre-populate this with whoever's logged in, so the driver's info, so when they log in, they'll see their name here automatically, but they'll have a little X that they could just clear the filter and they could type their own name in to be able to look it up, right? That's what we find most people want to be able to do for the aides. So drivers logged into Wayfinder, they're the only one logged in. They'll go and submit the form. It should automatically populate with their name, but once they submit their time card, they can have the aide, open the same form and just type their name in and punch.
And would it allow them to do that even if, like, for example, if your name wasn't in the database there, would it still allow you to do it?
No. So it's pulling this information from the database. If I'm not in
Okay.
Plus, it's not going to have me to tie it to.
Okay. And I think that was one of the reasons this was far more attractive, because with Samsara they were logging in, logging out. Remember the teams and all that garbage? It was just too complicated.
Yeah.
So here, the driver's logged in, they go do their time card, they come back to this form, and then the aide can just log in without, very simply. So I guess my thing is, should we add a field there that another drop down to say what bus that they're in?
So here's my feedback on working with someone. Go ahead.
That doesn't, when they clock in, doesn't it record their location or I remember, I don't know what settings I was looking at, but I know you can geocode your login, your clock in, where you're clocking in from. It has the XY coordinates. So I'm sure there's a way to find out what vehicle a person is in, especially if it's tied to a pre-trip that was done.
Yeah. So what I would say is it's, to what end are you looking to track that? Is it specifically for timekeeping? And people do have reasons for timekeeping to be able to want to see the vehicle, right? I have districts that go and check the GPS to say, all right, you clocked in at 8 a.m., but you didn't start your vehicle until, 9 a.m. What are we paying you here for? Something like that. But we are tracking the driver in the vehicle in other ways, right? If they're using Wayfinder, when they go to run a trip, it's going to have their planned vehicle, and it's going to prompt them to do a substitution if they're driving a different vehicle. So we're capturing on a daily basis what's happening with the trips. So like you said, we have a whole dispatch view where it's like, here's trip A, here's the driver assigned today to trip A, which may be different than the usual driver. Here's vehicle assigned for the day. Here's what time they took off. Here's how many kids they're picking up. So our dispatch view is keeping track of all that info. So it's in the system. Yeah, the only reason to have it on a field like this is specifically if, for timekeeping purposes,
Okay.
You're hoping to match up a punch to what their bus actually.
Yeah, I don't want to make it any more complicated. My purpose for it is to know who is assigned to what vehicle. I like, if I'm looking for a particular driver, I want to know what driver was in what vehicle on a given day. If there was an incident, for example, some kind of incident happened, something happened on Tuesday in bus 12, and and I need to know who was driving bus 12 on that day, at that time.
Yeah.
That's the information I want. I don't know how to get that, but that's.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't have the data in here. Can I jump into an environment maybe and show it real quick, something like that? So what we do have is, I don't think I'm gonna have any data for it, but because we're not actually out driving trips, but we do have this trip schedule screen, and the idea is this is your daily what happened, right? So I'm selecting the date because again, drivers and buses and all that changes on a day-to-day basis. So I can run it for the day. Yeah, and what it's going to have here for me is it's going to have a whole list of here's all your trips, and here's your current driver, right? So on the tablet, drivers are going to be prompted, what trip are you running? If I'm supposed to run trip 100, but the guy for 101 didn't show up today and I have to run that trip, the Wayfinder tablet's going to be grabbing that info. So it's going to tell me who the current driver is for each trip, who the current vehicle is. So I can look at vehicle information as well.
How does this get in there? The driver themselves would enter it?
Well, it depends. We've given drivers the ability to do it just because what we've heard from districts is dispatchers can't always keep up with it. Dispatchers could for sure make the change right here in the system as well. So if they know that bus 12 is out and they're going to be subbing it for bus 13, they can make that substitution themselves right on the fly. They can just right-click on the trip, substitute resources, and they'll make the change. But again, we hear so often that dispatchers can't keep up with those changes. That's why we put it into the tablet as well. So if a driver needs to make that change, they go out and there's a flat tire on their bus, and they're walking over to a different bus, Wayfinder will let them say, hey, this is the bus I'm driving for the route, this is the route I'm driving, and that's going to update all this information in real time here. So
I'd like that not to be an option. So
So drivers can't make substitutions.
No, they're no. No, we'll take care of that. I don't know what's wrong with their dispatcher.
So when you make the substitution,
All right.
you're gonna substitute the bus and identify the driver too, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, that's right. So those are the two resources that you manage, right? What driver and what vehicle. Joel, what I'm hearing from you guys is that from operations standpoint, you guys make those changes and substitutions. You don't want drivers doing it. And that's totally fine. So again, as those changes are happening, they're captured here in real time. Big thing that I want to mention about all this is that we're capturing daily records for each of our trips. So if I make a substitution, I'm not swapping driver A for driver B. What I'm saying is, today, Friday, 8/5, I'm making a substitution that this driver drove the trip, right? I still have a planned regular driver. Tomorrow it's going to go back and expect them to be on the bus. And if not, I'll have to make the substitution again, or I'll have to, when I'm making my substitution, say it's not just for a day, it's for a week or a month. So I do say that, Joel, just so you don't think that drivers are given the power to go in and totally mangle your routes or things like that. It's meant to be a daily, can I make a change on the fly that happens? If we want to set that up so drivers are not doing that, we'll work through that.
All right.
I still have the data to show, capturing some of that, because even jumping into real clients in summertime, right? So very few buses on the road. All right, we've talked through some of the timekeeping. Here's one piece I wanted to make sure to get into, and we'll dig into this more as we start capturing data and making changes. But just to show you what it means, when I run this report, and SMR, it has some missed punches, right? So they punched in at 7:09. I'm missing a punch out on 8:2. What does that look like to kind of correct? This is where I'm coming in, and I could take a look at my staff. That was a last name, I think. And I can open my staff record. This is where I'm going to actually see the raw data for the driver. So what time did they punch in, pieces like that, and where I can make the actual changes. It was 8:2 that I had a missed punch at 7:09. So if I go to 8:2, I can see their punch, 7:09, and you can see it. They punched in again, they punched out. And here's where I could go in and just say, all right, let me go ahead and drop an out punch for them and say, I don't really want to mess with your driver's time here if we're really trying to capture. But, if I wanted to, I could say 10 a.m. or something like that and give them that punch.
And then it'll show on the
I'll
list.
cancel out of this. But yeah, once I save that, I can run this report again, and I'm going to see 7:09, and I'm going to see 10, and it'll calculate hours for me. That process makes sense?
Yep.
Now, as far as I just haven't heard a request like this, but we're trying to go in, and it sounds very time consuming to go in and change shift by shift to add their hours, pieces like that. Maybe as we talk through this, there's other processes we could think of, but it is certainly possible to come in and say, so here's a 2.5 hour shift, right? 12:06 to 2:30. If you tell me that actually needs to be a 3.5 hour shift, you could definitely do that as well. So I come in, rather than clocking them out at 2:30, which was when they actually did it, I would just adjust their time and move that to 3:30 instead. And that's going to give them an extra hour on their pay. Right? So I can make adjustments to actual punches, and I can fill in missing punches.
Would it capture that the original punch was at 2:30?
Yeah, so we're capturing all that information. I don't know how many people are touching this, but with bigger districts, we got a few people with their hands making adjustments. If it's just Joel, he's probably knowing what he's doing, but you can also run an audit report. Hey, show me all my punches and show me if ones were edited, right? If somebody's making a 2-hour time adjustment, giving drivers extra pay, who's doing that, right? So we can run an audit report to see who made adjustments, when did they make adjustments, what was the original punch time, what was the adjusted.
I was thinking from the standpoint of like knowing what the true amount of time that was put into the route versus what the guaranteed time is we're paying. Not.
That's what I'm thinking, right? So if you have guaranteed hours for drivers, we can track that on the driver record. And so you can keep a log here, right? Here's the hours we clocked for the week. They've got 12:30. Their guaranteed hours are 15. Look, if you want, I think with enough data, we can maybe find a simplified process rather than going through and touching each shift that a driver had and adding extra hours to it. But Joel, we may need to talk through it and see what the end goal is. I don't even know where this data goes ultimately. Are we exporting it to a payroll system? Or
well, we send it. We send it to. Well, Susan, what does she do with the
She's
data?
I don't know how it's not getting automatically imported into payroll that I'm aware of.
So let me. Can I share my screen? I'm gonna show you what we do here. My screen share option is.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I think I gotta give you that. There you go.
All right. How do I do this? Chrome tab. I don't know. Let me know if you can see that.
Yep.
Yep, I got it.
Okay, so this is what it looks like when we're dealing with time cards. For example, this shift needs to be stretched out to 2 hours. We need to do this manually. So far she's got 10 hours this week, and she hasn't finished her shift for the day, and she's got a missed punch for this for Monday afternoon. Ignore the blue. It's the pink is what she's done. Okay.
Those are the actual punches.
Those are her punches. These are supposed to be projected, but those aren't always accurate. So if I'm going to adjust her time, I have to on a daily basis, or if time slips away, I end up doing it at the end of the week. But I'll have to come in here and manually adjust her times, her in and out times, so that it reflects the 2 hours she's guaranteed to have. If she works more than 2 hours, then it stays at what it's supposed to be. So if she did 2.5 hours, I don't touch it. If it's less than 2 hours, I bring it up to 2 hours. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
And it's a pain in the ass, is what it is.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, once all the time is done for everybody in the yard, I let Susan know, and whatever she does with that information is what she does with that information.
So and we got 5 minutes. I think this is maybe a little bit of a deeper conversation, but what I'm trying to understand is what good is it doing us, right? So we're not actually capturing what time they spent out on the road. You're trying to bulk them up to their guaranteed hours. Isn't there a way to just capture these two things separately? Here's what actually happened. Here's what they're guaranteed and what I'm going to send off to make sure they're getting paid. What I should really be concerned about is if they're working over what they're guaranteed. Obviously, I need to make sure to capture those. And if they're working way under, maybe there's some conversation or stuff like that I need to have. But going through and bulking these out to hit a number that that they're going to hit anyway, it's just to what end or what
that makes sense, doesn't it, Frank?
Yes, it does. I'm sure it sounds like it's a tremendous amount of work for you.
It's just not a way that I've seen anyone do it before, right? So what most of our districts do is they need to capture the hours. They want to see what they actually work. They keep that on record. What they're sending to their payroll is they're sending, hey, everyone's getting their guaranteed hours. Here's everything we've captured that's gone over guaranteed hours. Maybe they're going even over 40 hours. That's going to be obviously important to send over to payroll. But if it's guaranteed, it's guaranteed. If it's under guaranteed, then they're promised those hours anyway. So, I would love to talk through this. I think that sounds like very time-consuming, and I can see the interface you have now maybe easier for managing that process than the interface I'm showing you. So, we may have to kind of talk through that process, but I'm happy to make it work however you guys need to make it work.
Yeah, well, I think we accomplished a lot, just to simplify the pre-trip, to talk through the timekeeping reports and the process, and work toward, having this roll out as we get these things installed for September. And this last part is probably a conversation that, Joelle and Susan, our controller, and operations folks will kind of work through what's the easiest, what's the more simple way to accomplish this.
The only other exception is for those that can't work the guaranteed hours. So like they may be limited by Social Security or they can't bring in a certain amount of income. So they don't get a default 20 hours, if that makes sense. But that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah. Look, the one thing I wanted to make sure to bring up is I see that you guys had some training scheduled as well for the 9th. I don't know who you guys have planning to attend that. Our trainer, Aaron's great, but I think some of the stuff that you're looking to roll out initially is seating stuff we're working with you. You know, he's expected to talk you through using Wayfinder for navigation and attendance tracking and stuff like that. That's not stuff we're doing day one. I wanted to be on that call. I talked with Aaron to make sure that I was going to be there, and I just found out I'm getting put on a plane on Monday, so I'm going to be gone Monday through Wednesday. Aaron's going to be able to talk you through Wayfinder and talk you through some of maybe the bigger picture stuff about capturing the data and those dispatch views and things like that. But you know, I want to set realistic expectations when we're talking about some of these reports we're building for timekeeping and things like that. He may table that stuff, and maybe it makes sense for us to schedule some time to kind of talk through like we did here next week with us.
Cool.
That sounds good.
All right. I'll follow up with Maddie, and we'll figure out a good time, but appreciate it, you guys.
Also, for Maddie, am I sending you, or was it Macy? Is that how you pronounce the name? Macy?
Yeah, so if you can, any data related updates, you can send to Macy.
Okay, awesome. That's all.
All right, thanks, guys.
You can
Hey,
send
guys.
to me, but
Will do.
All right.
Appreciate it, everyone.
All right, have a great
Thank
weekend.
you.
thank you.
All right, bye-bye.